This is Atlas Network with Michael Carnuccio.
Hi, and welcome to Atlas Network. I'm your host, Michael Carnuccio. Like you, I've seen Syria as a topic in the news lately, and I have friends that are Syrian, and I've watched with excitement, but also because of some headlines, some concern, but mostly with curiosity and with excitement about the hope of the future of Syria. So today we're going to have that conversation with some friends in Atlas Network, and we're going to learn quite a bit together about each other, but we're going to be able to understand the pathway forward as well. And to help start that conversation, I want to invite Atlas Executive Vice President and Chair for Advancing Liberty, Dr. Tom Palmer, into the conversation. Tom, thanks so much for being with us today and for sharing your experience with our guests, Nouh and Mazen, who we'll hear from soon. Love to hear your thoughts, Tom.
Well, this Syrian situation is important not only for the people of Syria, but geopolitically as well. It's a very important country in the region, and the key to peace, in my opinion, is very much in Syria, so that the fate of the whole region depends on what happens to Syria. So I was watching events there from abroad, and I don't remember where I was at the time. I might have been in Ukraine, but I reached out over WhatsApp to my dear friend Nouh El Harmouzi, who runs the Arab Center based in Rabat, Morocco, and said, what can we be doing to help our friends there? Because they are the ones who could take the initiative, but they need support from other Arabs, from other people around the world who say, we are with you. And we were chatting about this, and he said, Mazen, our friend Mazen is back in Syria, in Damascus, which was fantastic and wonderful. And we began having a conversation about what could be done, what would be possible to assist our friends there to turn their country from tyranny and poverty, brutality and violence that they experienced toward a possible future of freedom, of justice, of peace and prosperity. I think it's possible, but only Syrians can make it happen. So, Nouh, you remember that when we were talking on WhatsApp, and the wonderful revelation that Mazen was back. How did you see it moving from there as we began to develop plans?
Yeah, Tom, and it was really an important moment for me. And it was very important because we were organizing the Arab Liberty Festival, and Mazen Derawan, he was with us in November, the beginning of November. And we were watching TV and following the situation in Syria every night. And Mazen told me something will happen this time, and this is the moment, etc. And we were watching the TV with a lot of emotions, etc. And thereafter, and immediately after the fall of the regime, Mazen went to Syria, and I kept in touch with him, sending messages, text messages, etc. And he told me, I'm in Syria, etc. And I told him, you were alive for more than 10 years, organizing events with us, organizing summer schools, organizing Arab Liberty festivals, etc. If you need anything, we are here. And in the same time, Tom Palmer contacted me, and he told me, we need to do something. And they told him, really, I'm talking with Mazen, let's do something. And we had this occasion and the opportunity to travel and to meet Mazen and to organize a lot of nice and wonderful events in Syria. And Mazen can talk more about that.
Yeah, Nouh, I thank you. Mazen, I welcome you into the conversation and have to hear about this moment that we just heard about from Nouh, that you knew something is going to happen. Now be ready. What is that moment of hope and excitement like? And what was that experience for you?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me into this conversation. And I want to thank Atlas Network for all the help they provided. Actually, the Syrian revolution, some people call it civil war. It's not civil war at all. It's a very classic revolution against tyranny. Civil war is among people who are from different beliefs or different national origins or This was not the case. It was a very classic case of revolution against one of the worst tyrannies the world has ever witnessed, unfortunately. So it took about 14 years for the people to arrive at this day. During those 14 years, well, first of all, it's not only the 14 years. I see it a revolution against the left for 65 years. It all started in 1958 when Nasser, when Syria had a union with Egypt. That union was forced on the democratically elected government by army officers who were on the left, and they pushed that democratically elected president into accepting that union with Nasser, who had a Soviet-style socialist system in Egypt. And that was the beginning of the decline of the country. The country had a free market system, very thriving free market system. It was separation of powers, just like any other country. It was number 40 in the world economically at that time. Now we are out of all classifications at the very bottom, unfortunately, because of all. So this whole thing started back actually 65 years ago. But the 14 years the last 14 years were an actual bloody, at times, and miserable at others revolution. Millions of people, half the population was displaced. And this is not a small island. This is a country of 25 millions. So when you have about at least 15 million displaced, maybe 5 million within Syria and 10 million out of Syria. I mean, this had never happened in human history, not to that magnitude, not to that percentage. And over time, the country, the regime decayed, if I may use this term. So that's why it became very obvious. I mean, everything was a problem in the country. I mean, a drink of water became a problem because of the inability of the regime to run the country as a country. So that was a sign of the regime. And actually, this regime, had it not been supported by most countries around the world, unfortunately, it would have fallen in 2012. And the revolution could not have taken more than a year. But because of the support it received from everybody, from NATO, from Russia, from Israel, from everybody. Everybody wanted that clown to stay where he is. I think they believe that the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. Probably that was their. If I have to think about it positively. So the point is, after 14 years, the country was under the ground, not on the ground. So that was a good sign that things will collapse. And the people who supported him, the countries who supported him, turned on him. And this was the reason, because he basically was kept in place by the Russians, by Russian fighter jets, period. That's it. Because, you know, who can fight a fighter jet with a Kalashnikov, you know? It's impossible. So we had to wait until somebody decides to hold off on those fighter jets. And the Russians obviously have been very busy in the last year and a half, probably in Ukraine, and that also played a role. So bottom line is, these were all signs that he was going to collapse. And I was in Morocco when the ground was shaking under him, and I was with Nouh in Morocco, and then things started getting, you know, more positive to us, of course, negative to him. And then I was in Egypt when the actual entry into Damascus happened, and there was no travel between Egypt and Damascus at that time because the airport anyway was closed. So my wife was in Chicago, and she called me at 4:00 Cairo time. She said, Damascus is down.
Damascus is down. Thank you so much for setting us up there. Tom, you mentioned something at the start of this conversation. Your quote was, Syria is the key to peace. And I want to come back to that because that is a very pointed statement. Tell me why you said that and give us some context around what that means.
Well, I mean, the first thing is it's a country that has been held in the grip of a brutal tyranny, and most people cannot appreciate how cruel and violent this tyranny was. They killed children. They executed people. They sent them to horrifying torture chambers. In a way, the country was organized as a kind of torture chamber. And this cruelty that Syrians experienced is difficult for foreigners to appreciate. And that's the reason so many people had to flee the country. But in terms of the geopolitics, there's rivalry among different states between Iran and Turkey to be the regional hegemon and so on. But for the Iranian dictatorship, it was the route for them to send weapons to Hezbollah, missiles, lots of money, and so on across with the support of the Assad government. In exchange, they provided Iranian military fighters, and Hezbollah provided fighters to defend the regime. And as many of my Arab friends have said, the Iranian state says, well, we are confronting Israel, and we will fight Israel until the last Arab is dead. So if you get the point, the Iranians not being Arabs, they sacrifice Arabs for their global crusade against Israel. And Syria was the key to this, the absolute key. And so now Hezbollah is cut off from the bulk of this support that has come through. Secondarily, the Russian dictatorship maintains military bases there that are very useful for the export of their tyranny and cruelty, especially in Africa. There's a recolonization of Africa being taken place, the Chinese state and the Russian state. They're highly extractive. They take uranium, gold, and so on out. And it's those military bases that connect Russia to Syria and then Syria to Africa, so they can extract resources, send mercenaries, and so on. And another element of this that Mazen alluded to, the Russian fighter bombers that bombed Syrians and wiped out neighborhoods, extraordinary cruelty, as we saw in Aleppo. And now that was, in a way, a practice for Ukraine. It's really the same policy, destroy everything. But also the Wagner Group, the Russian state recruits the most brutal, cruel people imaginable. They really look for people who like to hurt other people and make them suffer. And they deployed them in Syria. And what they did was, it beggars the imagination, dismembering people on camera, bashing them to pieces with sledgehammers. That was their tool. They loved to use the sledgehammer for executions, smashing their hands and their feet and then their pelvises and bludgeoning them to death and then finally crushing in their skulls. So this Wagner group that Putin has deployed is very brutal and cruel. And one of the testing grounds, the Syrian people were the test ground for the imposition of this cruel mercenary army. So this means that two dictatorships have lost a very important client of theirs, the Iranian dictatorship and the Russian dictatorship. Now, it also means they're trying to make sure that Mazen and his friends fail. This is something to keep in mind. There are multiple players. They do not want a peaceful Syria. They do not want a prosperous Syria. And they definitely do not want a democratic, free, open society there.
And if we talk about a free and open Syria, this is the perfect time to interject the Free Syria Center that you gentlemen are both board members of and Mazen a sponsor of. I'd love to understand more about the Free Syria Center, the genesis of it, the work that it's doing now. Nouh, I'll start with you as a board member. If you could give us your oversight and involvement as an economist with the organization as well.
Well, after visiting Syria and our friend Mazen, we had the occasion to organize many meetings, many conferences, and many private meetings, etc. And we figured out that it's very important to create a dynamic and to capitalize on this trip and on this meeting. Of course, we have Mazen, who is very well known, and she is a free market hero in Syria. And we decide that we need to find other persons who were part of our meetings, our conferences, and to organize them to create a think tank and to perpetuate this dynamic. And this is why, with Mazen and with the help of many friends, among them, of course, Atlas Network and Tom and Adam, we decide to create new structure and to call it Free Syria Center. And I worked with Tom and mainly with Mazen to find people who are interested to carry this battle and to promote our ideals. And definitely, Mazen is the good father of this initiative. So we decide to find people from different perspectives, from different colors. And this is the specificity of this new think tank, because we don't want it to be from one color. I mean, not Sunni Muslim only, not Shia Muslim, not Alawite, not Christian only, not Kurdish, but we have this mixture and multicolor new think tank. So we are extremely proud to have all this, to bring all these people around the table. And after that, we start our working discussion to write the mission, the vision. After many discussions, what are the strategic moves, etc., etc., and all that in cooperation, in direct cooperation with Mazen and under his guidance, because he is the Syrian, he knows better what needs to be done in this context.
And as Mazen, I want to pivot to you and get your thoughts, but I just have to say, Nouh, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking to myself, so many Atlas Network partners, their story of how they started, it may have looked very different, but so many of these components about bringing like-minded friends together, what can you do, what can I do, but we all have the same passion and goal. So hearing you walk through that after we just heard about the conditions and the context of what you all were working through, it has to be inspiring for many partners and such a shared experience. But from that experience side, Mazen, I have to hear for you, being there in country, what is it like for you to be part of Free Syria Center now?
Well, first of all, the good sign is that we are able to do it. Just the mere fact that we are able to do it, that should tell a lot about the change in the country. The government or the people who are governing now in this transition, it's called transitional government. I think, 2 days ago, I was attending the inauguration of the new government. Before we had what's the word in English? Temporary group of acquaintances of the president who just took on tasks to get by in the last 3 months. And then now we have an official interim government, we call it, and they are saying it should last 5 years. The cabinet is mixed. I think the most important positions are still held by the liberating group, like the foreign ministry, the defense ministry, the Ministry of Interior Affairs, meaning the police force, even the justice ministry. These are all in their hands, but all the other technical ministries are held by technocrats. And I know firsthand, some of them are old friends of mine, and they're all asking for my help because they know, I have international experience. And the Minister of Tourism, the Minister of social work. She's a good friend of mine. We've known each other for maybe close to 50 years. She's Christian, by the way, and she's the only woman in the cabinet. The technology minister, technology and communication minister, is a very, very good man. So they did select a group of good technocrats, and I was actually put on the committee of that decides the new tax code for the country, which was very important. My focus now is to really install a twin turbo engine for the economy, because that's what we need to recover economically, to increase our GDP. And so this is an area that is very important. And now I'm on the committee officially by the previous minister. I hope the new one will not cancel it and kick me out, but probably not. I am setting up now a meeting with the new minister of the economy. I will be taking, I will try to take a very effective position, because my goal is to control customs duties, which should be close to zero in my dictionary. And taxes, income taxes, I'll be pushing for 5 to 10% flat tax rates. That's what I'll be pushing for in order to make the economy more agile, more dynamic, more lean and mean, if you will, to stimulate export and local production. And Syria has been, is known for being the industrial center of the whole region. Historically, I'm talking about Damascus is 10,000 years old. So keep that in mind. We're not talking about 100 or 200 years. This is a pocket change in our history. So it's known for being the commercial and industrial hub for the region for thousands of years. So Syrians are highly productive people in general, and they're all artisans. They're all hard workers. They focus on their work. So I am very optimistic about their ability to recover at a lightning speed if we manage to unleash their abilities by lowering taxes to the max and abolishing bureaucracy. So I have my machete ready, and I'll be raising everything and starting over in all those bureaucracies. And I can send you some word that was said by the president, the current president, Shara. I think you would probably beg him to become a member in Allah's network. When he was talking, I feel like I was talking. And you can imagine, I am to the right of Milton Friedman, so you can imagine where he is. So we are seeing eye to eye, and that's very important. So I'm very, very hopeful that the economy, my aim is to be on the top of the list of Fraser Institute's statistics. That's my aim, to be right on the top of the list. So we'll see.
Mazen, I have to ask you, you talked a moment ago, you were talking about the history and 65 years and what the last 14 years was like. And now you're sitting here talking about being in a key position and having conversations about affecting change and what is possible for the future. A very hopeful conversation. I think many in our audience that are going to see this, that are Atlas Network partners, some of whom feel that they're on the outside looking in and no one's listening, but they're still willing to move forward. What message do you have for them about how long that you have had hope and belief, and now you're on the front lines of making change that is going to, as Tom pointed out, have a ripple effect throughout not just your country, but the entire region? What message do you have for others?
Well, historically, these last 65 years that I talked about are the oddity. The norm throughout history was the free market system. And sometimes I make this statement that that raises the eyebrows of some people. when I say Islam is a capitalist religion. And that is true. That is very true. Because in the teachings of Islam, which is the vast majority of the population, is from the Sunni Muslim faith. It is for small government, low taxes. That's embedded in the teachings of the religion, because Prophet Muhammad was a tradesman before he became a prophet. At the age of 40, he was a tradesman. So when people asked him to fix prices in some crises, he said, God sets prices, which is the free market system. So this is just an example of the teachings of the religion. So it's the norm in the Syrian society and in the Arab society. So leftist ideology is a foreign ideology to the region. It came from Lenin, Stalin, you name it. So that's why I'm very helpful. It's so natural. It's so in line with people's instinct. And you can see now, it's only been maybe 110 days. You can feel the difference. You can feel the difference. The availability of goods, the spirit of the people, even small retailers, mom and pop stores, as we call them in the States, they are so comfortable. There is plentifulness of goods, presenting their goods without worrying about government criminals to come in and confiscate their money and abuse them, and the list goes on and on and on. So it's very natural for the people. Actually, it's natural for all the people in the world.
And that is an excellent point. It is natural. And you mentioned all the people in the world. And I wanted to pivot to Tom with the same question. Tom, you're working with Atlas Network partners all over the world. In fact, jumping from continent to continent quite often. And yet you too immediately responded, calling Nouh with the sense of hope and excitement. Why is that? What do you see? What captivated you, and where do you see the future opportunity right now?
Well, a couple of things. I am a big fan of the Brazilian abolitionist Joaquim Nabuco, who fought to abolish slavery in his country all his life. And he said in his book that was so influential, he said, you should educate yourselves and educate your children in the love for the freedom of other people. Only when you love the freedom of others will you really appreciate your own. And I think it was so wise that when he said those things, and he set such an example of courage a whole lifetime to liberate people from the chains of slavery. And so the suffering of the Syrians reaches out to me. Now, there are other places that suffer also, but it's not so easy to be helpful to them. So think about Xinjiang province, what is happening to the Uyghur people in China right now. It is an unconscionable crime, the cultural extermination of these people. There's not so much we can do there. All of our partners in China have been shut down, and the regime there is hostile to these things. Syria represented such a remarkable change because a brutal tyranny can be strong in the sense that they'll torture you, but they're brittle. When there's enough force, they collapse the ground. And this regime collapsed of just really a few weeks. Boom, it was gone. And the tyrant fled to his patron sponsor, Vladimir Putin, in Moscow. He collects dictators who have been deposed. They all live around him there in Moscow. And so this is an opportunity with the regime collapsed to the ground. There's a good chance they could realize freedom, but it is not guaranteed. It is not guaranteed. It depends on the activities of the people with good hearts and good minds. And our friend Mazen has both. He has a mind that is sharp as a tack. He's an entrepreneur and a scholar. And he has a heart that reaches out to people. He can deal with one economic fallacy after another, smack them down with logic, but with a smile. and end up with people afterwards laughing and joking about it. This is a great talent. And so I'm so happy to have him as a friend and to watch him and learn how he does what he does so well. So Syria is an opportunity to realize the possibility of freedom, but it is not guaranteed. It can collapse. It can go wrong. It needs local people to make sure that they do the right thing, make sure the government is accountable, that crimes that are committed, even by people close to the government or in the government, must be stopped and punished. And this is something our friends have been very explicit about. The massacres in March in the coastal regions were terrible, and the government has to stop this. It cannot be allowed to continue. And then make possible a society where everyone can live as an equal citizen, which is something that the current president said at the beginning. We don't want a caliphate. We don't want one state religion. We want a society of citizens. And given his background, really, this was a remarkable transformation, really important. To give up the idea of religious uniformity and conformity through violence and say we want a pluralistic society, one that will have a place for Arabs and Kurds and other Turkmen and other languages and ethnic groups and all of the religious groups, because your religion is not what matters. It's your willingness to follow the law and the Constitution. This reminded me of George Washington. I don't want to make too many comparisons because we don't know how the future will turn out. But the idea of being equal citizens, I was struck by, when I heard him say that, by George Washington's letter to the Hebrew congregation of Newport, Rhode Island, in which he said, we are a country where everyone is free to worship as they want, and no one should be afraid. That is, I think, the possibility for Syria. And it has the possibility of leading the entire region out of this quagmire of revenge, retaliation, violence, and tyranny into an open future of peace and freedom.
On that point right there, that's a great point that I think a lot of Atlas Network partners and supporters, they want to help Free Syria Center. They want to get involved. They should get involved. They can go to atlasnetwork.org and help and plug in. And it's on that point that you made and their willingness to engage that, Nouh, I have to ask you, you're at the Arab Research Center. You've had a focus, this pan-Arab focus that you've been involved in. Here's the opportunity that you see in Syria. Why is it so important? Why do we need to get this right? What is the ripple effect that could happen if someone can plug in with support and with partnership now? What is the impact that you could see happening over the next several years?
Of course, it's extremely important because generally the situation, if we compare it also, so it's nearly the same everywhere. But we got a little bit disappointed after the Arab Spring, and we were following the Tunisian case, which was a nice example. I think that the Syrian example can be brighter and can give hope. And we definitely need hope in this region of the world. And like Mazen and like Tom, I'm quite optimistic. I'm quite optimistic about the situation there. And this is why I am directly involved with my friends and my colleagues, because we think that, and as Mazen did, I am following the discourse and the speeches of the president of the government, and from someone who was a jihadist. It's big improvement and it's a big change. So I'm quite optimistic, and this is what I say to my friends and colleagues in this think tank. We need to help these people accountable, and we need to push them to respect what they say. So it's extremely important in this period to see that a former jihadi is declared and in action, in my opinion, is changing, and they are implementing really a free market agenda economically and gradually politically and socially talking. So we have a very big hope. This is the first. The second, we have a very dynamic actors in Syria who can advance our message and who can create a very positive dynamic. Our colleagues, and mainly under the guidance of Mazen, we were able to write policy briefs about the tax code, and this tax code was sent to many very important persons. And before writing this tax code, they called Mazen Derawan to be the member of this commission who will write it, etc. So we have really good chances in this region in Syria to implement a true free market reforms and free market institutions. So any help is more than welcome, and this is the momentum, I think.
And it's incredible opportunity for someone to immediately have impact and partner with their brothers and sisters that are doing the work on the front line, to have such transformational footprint that could happen not only in time, but in the geographical region itself for the rest of us. And our audience will understand that as things are changing right now, even internet access and stability is a challenge as things are continuing to reform and adopt in Damascus and elsewhere. And so we've lost temporary communication with Mazen. We're working to bring him back. And as we do so, Tom, I've got to ask you, project forward for me. You heard Mazen about how he said he has great relationships and he's hearing the right things. You hear Nouh talk about the hope and enthusiasm and how they're literally generating papers that are being requested and then immediately carrying into conversation. What does this look like, and what can the rest of us learn from Free Syria Center right now and the partnerships? How can this help other Atlas Network partners across the globe?
Well, let me add to the optimism that Nouh expresses, a guarded optimism, which I think he would understand also. There are different players who want this to fail. And domestically, terrorist groups, but also internationally, especially Russia and Iran as states, they want failure. So our friends there have a really daunting task. This is not like trying to change the tax code in Belgium or someplace like that where you don't have foreign invaders attacking you. But then with that as the context, it emphasizes how important it is that it's local people. So our model is not to create a franchise. Like, we put a McDonald's or a Wendy's here or there. They all have the same menu and so on. Just the opposite. Local people know how the society works. They know what the problems are. They know what people respond to. They know what their concerns are. They know the institutional constraints, possibilities, and limits. And so our job is just to help them and empower them. And they set the agenda. They identify what are the opportunities. Attempts to helicopter in institutions, like you're just helicoptering in a building and dropping it someplace, these fail. They fail systematically. The World Bank and other groups have tried to do that for decades, and it's a history, a litany of failures, one after another. Local people who take responsibility, they own this project, it's their country, they live with the consequences, are more likely to get it right. And so the landing, as Mazen and his friends did, right on their feet, and there's a whole group of them, including other Syrians who have returned from exile. And then, of course, with the internet, people who can draw on this amazing talent pool of Syrians around the world. I mean, go any place but Syria, and you find all these successful and wealthy Syrians. They're successful everywhere. They have a deep commercial mentality. I think it's a cultural trait. Latin America and so on, Syrians are found throughout business in the United States, Canada, and so on. And now is the chance for Syrians to liberate that potential. And this is good for Syrians. It's good for everyone, something that good economists understand. When trade is free, everyone benefits from their prosperity. So from going, I think they're the bottom three from the bottom at the Economic Freedom of the World Report. They're right there. It's a terrible position to be in. If they can raise that and move up in economic freedom, they will enrich the world.
Nouh, you're working with Mazen, you're working with many at Free Syria Center. Maybe you can touch on the emotions of your colleagues and the opportunity that lies ahead.
Of course, it was and it continues to be a very emotional moment and very emotional period. I remember when we were with our colleagues and allies in Syria, we had many meetings, the Chamber of Commerce, Chamber of Industry, etc. A lot of people, they were extremely passionate and extremely optimistic about the situation. Of course, we may have some setbacks, and what you saw lately was a terrible situation, and we as Free Syria Center, under the guidance of Mazen, we wrote few things about condemning that, but I think that we are keeping hope. We organize many meetings with the members of the think tank and also many other Syrians to show our solidarity with the Alawites, and many members of our think tank are Alawites, and we, with Mazen, wanted to make sure that we have them and to be there with them and for them inside our think tank and on the ground in Syria. So many challenges, but we are extremely optimistic, and we have a lot of optimism to face the very complicated situation. As I said in the beginning, we have very positive signals, and we will continue our battle, and we will try to work with the authorities to push them to toward the good direction, implementing free market institutions. So the situation is hard, it's complicated, but I think that we are very optimistic, and we will move forward. We'll continue our battle.
Well, let me just add something to what Nouh has said, and this is very important. Talking about human rights is a good thing. Implementing the institutional changes that will protect them is the key. It's easy to talk about human rights. What are you going to do to see that they are respected? And talking is not enough. You need to change the institutions. So there are two things that I think are very important that Free Syria Center is working on. Number one is when you have such a poor society that has shrunk in its wealth so much, from being one of the wealthiest regions in the country to quite desperately poor through most of the country. The bitterness, people are fighting over resources. Make the pie bigger. Allow there to be growth so everybody can say, I can be better off. And the fact that that group is doing better than I am, or that person doesn't hurt me, I can do better also. The zero-sum mentality is the death of liberty. When you say, oh, your gain must come at my expense. It's a positive-sum gain when you have a market economy. And that creates a mentality and a framework for peace and prosperity both. The last point is the willingness to close the door on the tyranny of the past. And this is hard, especially for people who suffered, to say, we want a society where we think about the future. We think about our children and our grandchildren, and how will they live? And I've witnessed that in Syria when people would come and say, oh, so-and-so was a collaborator, this person, and so on. And people said, that was the past. And if we want to have a hopeful future for our children, we must close the door on that. Yes, justice for the top criminals, but don't tear the society apart. Let's come together through mutual exchange. And it's that principle of the free exchange that is the foundation of a free society. And this is what they're working for. This is what gives me so much hope for the country. They're not just people who have good hearts. That's important. They have sharp brains also. They know how economics, the principles of economics. They understand how wealth is created, not by magic, not by edicts and decrees from the prime minister or the president. It's created by enterprise, by business, and by trade.
Can you capture your emotion for us, but also give us your closing thoughts and why everyone should be excited about Syria?
I would be happy to lead that off. I got, when I was speaking in the United States, my brief visit, people said that in the news they were massacring Christians. And I had to explain this is not what's happening. It was Alawis, and this is a terrible crime. But that I did mention, and we can reiterate, that the government has to be held to account. And verbally, they have said this. Some steps are being taken, but it's a serious matter for the future of country. This has to stop, and the people who did it have to be punished. No question about it. And all of our friends agree, regardless of religion or sect, it's a human matter, not a sectarian matter.
Tom, I'm interested to know, as you're traveling around through different continents and we're talking about your time and the Free Syria Center and what's happening in Syria, I'm sure you're getting a lot of questions. Folks are wanting to understand some more. What are some of those questions and conversations that you're having?
Well, the world witnessed some terrible crimes in March of this year, especially in the coastal regions. Revenge killings. There was a really terrible massacre. And the first point is, it was reported by some people, oh, they're killing Christians. This was actually not the case. It was the Alawi religious community who bore the brunt of the suffering and the victimization here. And it was, in my opinion, and others share this, a provocation, especially by Iran. They want this regime to collapse, and Russia. It was immediately afterwards, a flash mob was organized at the Russian military bases saying, Russia, Russia, come and save us. We have to understand how brutal the Iranian and the Russian states are. They're willing to sacrifice huge numbers of people for their perceived policy goals, including sometimes their own people, as we've seen with the Russians, the Russian army killing Russians in Russia and then blaming it on the Ukrainians, for example. So this horrific crime riveted the attention of Syrians. Many people of all religious groups came out and protested against this. And they need to call on the government to do several things. One, make sure that there is justice, that this is not repeated, that every community, every person is protected. And that's the important thing, every person, not just every community. And then they have to deal with those foreign fighters who have come to Syria in order to murder people over religion and their perception of heresy and so on. So the foreign fighters are typically the most brutal. They don't live there. So they're often the most awful. We saw that in Afghanistan. Al-Qaeda, they were foreigners. The Taliban were bad enough, but the foreigners were really cruel and monstrous, especially against people they perceived as heretics from their own version of the religion they hold to be pure. So they punish and murder them with glee. They like it. And this government, the Free Syria Center, is calling on them in an informed and forceful way. This has to stop, because if it continues, there's no future. If there's to be a future, there must be justice. And this is something that I think members of all communities in Syria have united on. It's extremely important. So we will see the test of the government being held accountable. And if they pass this test, after this horrifying suffering, this brutality, if they can pass this test, they have a chance to have a free society of Syrians, not of this sect and that sect or the other sect. Christian, Jew, Muslim, Alawi, Sunni, Shia, Turkmen, Kurd, Arab, everyone should be able to live together as equal citizens. And that's the vision our Syrian friends have put forward.
Yeah, I like to elaborate on something and make it clear to your audience. First of all, you need to keep in mind that this regime has been working on creating rift within the population for, I say, 65 years. And with the collapse of such a regime, you would expect rivers of blood in the country. What ended up happening, things were very peaceful. In the scheme, when you put them in perspective, I need people to have their ideas in perspective, or the facts in properly. The idea is they controlled the collapse of the regime. There was virtually no atrocities. For 3 months, this was instigated by, like what Tom said, by the remnants of the thugs of the ex-regime. They attacked police force. They killed 180 in ambushes orchestrated at the same time. And then they had to receive, because everything was peaceful, and those are police force trying to keep the peace. So when you are 3 months at peace, the guards let their guards down. And then when they were attacked in a sudden ambush by those remnants of the regime, of course, some new forces had to be brought in from other regions, and some how can I say, some people who were not part of the police force went in, who had wanted to do some revenge and acted in that way. And things immediately went under control. Do I condone that? Absolutely not. Does anyone in Syria of any background condone such killing? Everybody was against it, because definitely everybody is sick and tired of violence. We want peace. We want to have enough time to build our country. And things stopped. Now you see some little things here and there happen, but when you put things in their perspective, you could have had 100,000 people murdered after the collapse of the regime. If people wanted to avenge themselves against the whole sect of Alawites, believe me, not one Alawite will remain alive. But nobody wants that. They're all our brothers and sisters. They all lived in the country. We were against brutality of the regime, not to create another brutality. Absolutely not. And I'm not speaking as Mazen. I know the sentiment. And people who controlled it are those people who are in the presidential palace. Their forces managed to protect them. Otherwise, you would have had people. You know how many crimes those people committed? I'm not talking about the Alawites in general, but the major decision makers were from the Alawite sect, and everybody knows that. And I'm not going to sugarcoat things. This was a reality. But everybody knows that not everybody is a criminal. And these people are hiding in the mountains, and they were loaded with weaponry, because they stole a lot from the official Syrian army weaponry, and they are all hiding in the mountains on the seaside where they originally are from, because that environment somehow protects them. So I want people to know that this is not sectarian. This was against criminals. Yes, some atrocities happened. Nobody approved that, and it will not happen. If it were to happen, it would have happened 3 months ago. I just wanted to put things in their proper perspective.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to ask you if you are moved as we are about the hope and the opportunity and the future. If you hear about Syria and you hear about something that you want to get involved in, if you hear about some people that you want to partner with, the Free Syria Center are your friends. They're your partners. And we ask you to join us in partnering with them. And if you want to support the worldwide freedom movement, I invite you to join me as a member of Atlas Network and support in any way that you can. It will definitely go to make a brighter future for others. And gentlemen, I want to thank you all for the generosity of your time today. I've learned and grown from this conversation. You've helped me have a better understanding of not just what is happening and what the future could be in Syria, but the effect that could have regionally and for the rest of the globe. And so I want to thank each of you. Nouh, thank you so much for your time. Mazen, thank you for all that you're doing, the sacrifice you're making. Your courage is inspiring, sir, and we look forward to working with you. Honored to be a partner with both of you. And Tom, thank you as always for your partnership and leadership and the conversation today. Folks, we'll be with you very soon on another episode of Atlas Network. I'm honored to be your host, Michael Carnuccio. Have a good day.